Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov is widely regarded as one of the greatest and most dominant athletes in the history of mixed martial arts, MMA. Hailing from the Republic of Dagestan, Russia, he retired as the undefeated UFC lightweight champion with a flawless professional record of 29-0. In 2012 Khabib had his first fight with Kamal Shalaris. Khabib Nurmagomedov made his highly anticipated UFC debut on January 20, 2012, at Khabib immediately demonstrated that he was more than just a grappler by dropping Shalaris with a crisp left uppercut in the first round. Although Shalaris was known for his elite wrestling defense, he struggled to cope with Khabib's relentless pace and stifling pressure. By the third round, iconic Papaka hat but also marked the beginning of one of the most dominant undefeated runs in the history of professional sports. In 2012 Khabib had his second fight with Gleison Tibau. In his second UFC outing on July 7, 2012, at UFC 148, Khabib Nurmagomedov faced off against the massive Brazilian veteran Gleison Tibau in what would become the most controversial fight of his entire career. Takedown defense, famously neutralized all 13 of Khabib's takedown attempts, marking unable to bring his opponent to the mat. Throughout the 3 rounds, the fight remained a grueling stalemate against the cage, while Tibau landed slightly more significant strikes and even secured a brief takedown of his own. Khabib maintained a relentless forward pressure and higher volume of aggression. When the final horn sounded, all 3 judges surprisingly awarded Khabib. Fans and analysts, including commentator Joe Rogan, stunned. Despite the debate surrounding the scorecards, the win kept Khabib's undefeated record intact and proved he could withstand the pressure of a high-stakes Las Vegas event against a world-class veteran. On January 19, 2013, at UFC on FX7, Khabib Nurmagomedov silenced a hostile Brazilian crowd in São Paulo with a devastating first-round knockout of local veteran Thiago Tavares. Despite the high tension of fighting in Brazil, highlighted by Khabib wearing his famous, "If Sambo was easy, it would be called Jiu-Jitsu" canvas. The Eagle immediately followed up with a barrage of nearly 15 unanswered elbows and punches on the ground, forcing referee Dan Miragliotta to wave off the fight at the 155 mark. This dominant performance was a major turning point, as it proved Khabib possessed legitimate knockout power and the killer instinct needed to complement his world-class wrestling, further cementing his status as a rising threat in the lightweight division. On May 25, 2013, at UFC 160, Khabib Nurmagomedov delivered a historic performance against Abel Trujillo that rewrote the UFC record books. After a heated weigh-in where Mike Tyson famously watched the 2 fighters nearly brawl, Khabib entered the octagon and put on a grappling clinic that remains legendary. Single UFC fight. Even when Trujillo managed to return to his feet, wrestling in control. Khabib dominated every minute of the contest to earn a 30-27 unanimous decision victory, proving that his Sambo-based pressure was an unstoppable force that could break even the most athletic opponents. On September 21, 2013, at UFC 165 in Toronto, Khabib Nurmagomedov faced off against the durable veteran Pat Healy in a performance that Dana White later compared to the prime of Matt Hughes. Khabib controlled the pace from the start, utilizing a surprising mix of striking, including flying knees and sharp uppercuts that bloodied Healy early on. However, the defining moment of the fight occurred in the 3rd round when Khabib executed one of the most famous slams in UFC history. He hoisted the much larger Healy into the air, carried him across the octagon with incredible strength, and slammed him emphatically to the canvas. This display of sheer physical dominance and high-level grappling earned Khabib a clear 30-27 unanimous decision victory. The win over a respected top 10 contender like Healy proved that Khabib was no longer just a prospect, but a legitimate championship threat who could overwhelm seasoned veterans with both his wrestling and his evolving stand-up game. On April 19, 2014, rounds with a masterclass in Sambo and chain wrestling. Khabib's relentless pressure made it impossible for the Brazilian to establish his rhythm. Every time Dos Anjos tried to strike, Khabib closed the distance, initiating heavy clinches and landing thunderous takedowns. The most iconic moment of the fight saw Khabib hoist Dos Anjos into the air for a high-altitude slam that left the Orlando crowd in awe. After 15 minutes of suffocating top control and punishing ground and pound, Khabib earned a 30-27 unanimous decision. This victory was a major statement to the division, as Dos Anjos went on to win the UFC title just 11 months later, leaving Khabib as the uncrowned king during his subsequent hiatus due to injuries. On April 16, 2016, at UFC on Fox 19, Khabib Nurmagomedov made his long-awaited return to the octagon after a grueling 2-year layoff caused by multiple injuries. Originally scheduled to face Tony Ferguson, Khabib instead met promotional newcomer Darrell Horcher in a 160-pound catchweight bout after Ferguson was forced to withdraw. Despite the long absence, Khabib showed very little ring rust, quickly finding his rhythm and taking Horcher down with a powerful double-leg slam midway through the first round. From there, it was a display of sheer dominance. Khabib transitioned to a mounted crucifix and began a relentless assault of ground and pound. In the second round, the pressure became too much as Khabib secured back control and unleashed a barrage of unanswered punches, forcing the referee to stop the fight at 3:38 of round 2. This TKO victory was an emotional comeback for the Eagle, proving to the world that he was still the most dangerous force in the division and setting the stage for his eventual rise to the undisputed title. On November 12, 2016, at UFC 205 in Madison Square Garden, Khabib Nurmagomedov produced one of the most terrifyingly dominant performances in MMA history against Michael Johnson. Although Johnson briefly found success with his fast hands in the opening minute, Khabib quickly regained control and began a systematic mauling that lasted nearly 3 rounds. What made this fight legendary was the psychological warfare. While landing heavy ground and pound, Khabib was heard calmly telling Johnson, "You have to give up, I need to fight for the title," as if he were trying to reason with him. Between rounds, Khabib even shouted at UFC President Dana White, who was sitting ringside, promising to "smash your boy," referring to Conor McGregor. In the third round, after relentless pressure, Khabib finally secured a Kimura submission at the 2:31 mark. This victory was a massive statement on the sport's biggest stage, proving that Khabib was not just a fighter, but an unstoppable force who could dominate his opponents both physically and mentally. On December 30, 2017, at UFC 219, Khabib Nurmagomedov delivered what many consider the most terrifying display of forward pressure in MMA history against the elite striker Edson Barboza. Entering the cage after another year-long layoff, Khabib faced the deadliest kicker in the division, but he neutralized Barboza's weapons by simply walking forward through every strike. Once Khabib closed the distance, he executed a relentless mauling that left Barboza physically and mentally exhausted. Khabib landed a staggering 89 significant strikes and controlled the fight with 4 powerful takedowns, never allowing Barboza a moment to breathe or reset. The dominance was so lopsided that the judges turned in rare scores of 30-25 and 30-24, reflecting a total blowout. This performance was a chilling reminder to the lightweight division that even the most dangerous strikers in the world could be completely dismantled by Khabib's suffocating Sambo style, officially setting him up for his long-awaited shot at the undisputed title. On April 7, 2018, at UFC 223, Khabib Nurmagomedov finally captured the undisputed lightweight championship in a fight that became famous for its chaotic build-up. After a week of multiple opponent changes, from Tony Ferguson to Max Holloway and finally to Al Iaquinta on just 1 day's notice, Khabib remained unfazed by the madness. During the 5-round contest, Khabib showcased a different side of his game. While he dominated the early rounds with his trademark wrestling, he spent much of the later rounds standing up, using a stiff, punishing jab to systematically bloody Iaquinta's face. Despite Iaquinta's incredible toughness and refusal to be finished, Khabib's control was absolute. He earned a lopsided unanimous decision with scores of 50-43, 50-43, and 50-44, officially becoming the first Russian-born champion in UFC history. This victory marked the beginning of his era as the king of the lightweights and set the stage for the biggest grudge match in MMA history against Conor McGregor. On October 6, 2018, at UFC 229, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor faced off in the biggest and most personal fight in MMA history. Following months of intense trash talk and the infamous bus incident in Brooklyn, the world watched as Khabib systematically dismantled the Irish superstar. Khabib shocked the crowd in the second round by dropping McGregor with a massive overhand right, then transitioned into a punishing ground-and-pound assault that earned a 10-8 score on all judges' cards. Although McGregor managed to win the third round, the first round Khabib had ever officially lost in the UFC, the momentum shifted back in the fourth. Khabib secured a takedown, transitioned to the back, and locked in a brutal neck crank submission at the 3:03 mark. The fight's legacy was further cemented by the post-fight chaos, where Khabib leaped over the cage to confront McGregor's corner, sparking a massive brawl. Despite the controversy, the win solidified Khabib as a global superstar and the undisputed king of the lightweights, moving his perfect record to 27-0. On September 7, 2019, at UFC 242 in Abu Dhabi, Khabib Nurmagomedov returned from suspension to unify the lightweight title against interim champion Dustin Poirier. Fighting in front of a heavily pro-Khabib crowd in the middle of the desert, the Eagle showcased his signature suffocating grappling from the opening bell, controlling the first two rounds with ease. However, the fight provided a moment of high drama in the third round when Poirier locked in a deep guillotine choke that appeared to have the champion in genuine trouble. Displaying incredible composure, Khabib remained calm, escaped the hold, and immediately reversed the position to take Poirier's back. Just moments later, Khabib secured a rear-naked choke, forcing the tap at 2:06 of the third round. Following the victory, the two fighters famously swapped t-shirts as a sign of mutual respect, and Khabib later auctioned off Poirier's shirt to raise $100,000 for Dustin's, the Good Fight Foundation, further cementing his legacy as a respectful but unstoppable champion. On October 24, 2020, at UFC 254 in Abu Dhabi, Khabib Nurmagomedov competed in the final and most emotional fight of his career against the dangerous interim champion Justin Gaethje. Fighting for the first time since the passing of his father and mentor, Abdulmanap, Khabib displayed a frantic, high-pressure striking game in the first round to close the distance against the hard-hitting American. Despite taking several punishing leg kicks, Khabib secured a takedown late in the first and then completely overwhelmed Gaethje in the second. After catching another leg kick, Khabib transitioned with lightning speed into a triangle choke, rendering Gaethje unconscious at the 1:34 mark. Immediately following the win, Khabib collapsed in tears in the center of the octagon before laying his gloves on the mat and announcing his retirement from MMA. He cited a promise made to his mother that he would not continue to fight without his father by his side, leaving the sport as the undefeated, undisputed lightweight champion with a perfect 29-0 record.